All right. Well, we want to get the civil rights perspective of all of this, and that's why we want to bring in right now. We want to bring in our next guest who knows more about civil rights than just about anybody in America, the host of the Civil Rights Lawyer Show, and that is John Bryan. Welcome in, John. Great to have you here on the show.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So we're trying to unpack this, and from a legal perspective, as an American who goes to a protest carrying a 9mm weapon concealed in a hip holster, what rights does this individual have? What rights do other Americans have in similar situations?
Well, I'm not a Minnesota lawyer, and I'm not someone who's really going to give advice on protesting in Minneapolis right now.
Sure.
I'm just somebody who has a problem with masked federal agents disarming somebody, then shooting him, and then having federal officials immediately get on TV and say, this guy just attacked federal officers with a gun, when multiple bystander videos show that that's not actually what happened. This is what we have here, and I've been talking about this for a long time, is federal officers effectively operating in what's been called a constitution-free zone. They feel no accountability at all towards constitutional rights. What I can tell you is that we have the right not to be shot to death by our government under the Fourth Amendment, where it's unnecessary, where it's unjustified. And it appears to me and other people that that's exactly what has happened here. Yet what is to be done about it? And so that there are a lot of other lawyers that are much more knowledgeable on these issues when you're dealing with the federal government than I am. And that's why I just had like a 45-minute conversation with Patrick Giacomo with the Institute for Justice to get his take on what's happening and everything that he's seeing right now in Minneapolis. And it's whatever you think about the facts, what you've seen, the one thing we know for a fact is that these federal officers are entirely unaccountable to the citizens, to us, at this moment in time. So I think the better message is that you shouldn't try to fight these federal officers on the streets. You should be fighting them in court. That is where the Constitution is going to be protected, is in court. And there's a lot of fighting to be done right now.
Right. You mentioned the masking, and this is something that came up in the death of Renee Good as well, is, how do we know who we're dealing with, and what is the problem with that?
Yeah, what could go wrong with, masked federal agents, roaming around anonymously who are entirely unaccountable, not only to state and local authorities, but to us. It's something that I think the right has been against forever, yes, and now suddenly is for it because they have this political bias on the immigration policies. And it's just a terrible idea. We should never want our federal government running around in masks, and there's nothing that we can do about it. That's basically what's happening right now.
Is it unprecedented? Is there a law against it? Because it's just, all I can see is a bunch of ignorant people screaming about it on X, but none of us really know what the actual law is and the precedents for it. And so maybe you can tell me.
I don't know either. The problem is we're dealing, if we're talking state or local, it's completely different.
Okay.
There's at least some amount of accountability there. Yeah, they have qualified immunity, but we can haul them into court. We can sue them. We can we're entitled to the name of the officer. We can sue the officer, and there's at least some accountability there. When we're dealing with federal officials, it's actually very scary because we effectively basically cannot sue them like you could state or local officers who violate your constitutional rights. And at the same time, even your state and local authorities, they effectively cannot prosecute those federal officers. I mean, it can be done theoretically, but it's very, very difficult for them to do. And when they can do it, it basically can be removed to federal court and take local jurisdiction completely away. So it's very, very scary, not only that you have these masked individuals, but they're entirely unaccountable. And you may be okay with that right now because you like who is making the decisions and you support the immigration enforcement policy. But what happens in 4 years if somebody else is in charge of the administration and they're sending now masked federal agents to a Second Amendment protest, such as in Virginia, where it's very common for Second Amendment advocates to open carry AR-15s at the state capitol? What happens when those masked federal agents, anonymous federal agents, are sent there and they disarm one of them and shoot him multiple times, killing him? And the Democrat administration then gets on TV and says, don't worry about it. It was completely justified. That was an insurrectionist, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the scary thing that people aren't realizing is, we've already had Ruby Ridge and Waco and other incidents. And if you're okay with it here, just because you think they're on your side, well, what happens in 4 years or 6 years when they're not on your side?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and separately, many of these same people from Obama and Biden are still actually inside of ICE and actually still inside of the hierarchy of the Customs and Border Patrol. So many of the same people from the previous administration are still running things. So you're right about this. And when the shoe is on the other foot, are you going to be there to support it? And we've already seen this happening in multiple protests, whether it was January 6th or otherwise. So you're absolutely right about this. And people have a short-term memory because 4 years comes and goes pretty quickly.
Well, right. Republicans' defense of Kyle Rittenhouse having a gun at a Black Lives Matter protest now falls flat if they think that this man couldn't have had a gun. The contradiction you're pointing out is blaring. It wasn't a question. I apologize. Did you?
Yeah, I hope that people are seeing that the mask has sort of been pulled off of a lot of these federal officials who have been sort of cosplaying, conservatives and supporting the Second Amendment. In reality, there are authoritarian statists on both sides, and they're all against citizens exercising their Second Amendment rights. And we sort of have seen the mask come off, for instance, Kash Patel saying, well, if you go to a protest armed, then you may get shot. And other federal officials saying similar things. And at the same time, we see what just happened. And they're saying that this guy attacked federal officials with a firearm when we can watch the video and we can see that did not happen.
Right.
Yes, he had a firearm, but he never took it. It doesn't appear that he ever took it out of the holster. It was actually the federal agents who jumped on that guy, like 6 or 7 of them, and they pull it out of his holster, and then the guy gets shot and killed. So his actions with the gun had nothing to do with him getting killed. That was all on the federal officers. And so hopefully people realize that, these federal officials in either administration do not support your Second Amendment rights. And if we are not careful, we are going to give them even more power, even more authority, and it's going to be used against us, just like the Patriot Act was. So they'll probably come up with some sort of Federal Officers Protection Act, and it's going to criminalize anybody having, a military style pistol with optics and multiple magazines, and now we've lost even more rights just in the name of safety. And why don't we just take a step back and put our political biases aside and just objectively look at what happened and try to apply the law fairly. What happened? Was it objectively reasonable based on the circumstances, and why? So that's the one thing that our federal officials are not doing. And that's the one thing that we need to do. Here, an unarmed guy, we believe an unarmed guy was shot. How did that occur? Was there a negligent discharge that led the officers to believe that the guy had fired at them? Was this a mistake? We don't know all the facts yet, but it does not look good.
We just spoke to Larry Johnson a few moments ago, former CIA agent and NRA gun trainer, and he said, we all have like relatives who fought in the Revolutionary War. Many of us do, and he said this is what we fought against the British for: this illegal search and seizure coming into your home. This is another piece of this now, which is the expansion of these powers coming into your home without a warrant. These warrantless searches. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I have a video on my YouTube channel I'm going to release here this evening, my interview with Patrick Giacomo of the Institute for Justice, and they are sort of on the forefront of the legal effort at holding federal officials accountable when they violate your civil rights. Very, very complicated issue legally. They are a national nonprofit law firm, and they've already just recently been at the U.S. Supreme Court successfully on these issues. So he's the one I wanted to talk to about that. And he actually went in depth on the claim that the administration is making that they can enter our homes based on a so-called administrative warrant. So his explanation of that I thought was fantastic. And that is, he said, I'm refusing to even call the so-called administrative warrant a warrant because it's not a warrant at all. Basically, what this administrative warrant is one ICE officer giving a piece of paper to another ICE officer that says, like, I hereby am giving you permission to go inside that house. So there's no actual judge involved at all. So, I mean, it should not even be called a warrant at all. And if so-called conservatives who value freedom cannot see the problem with that, if you allow that now because you want illegals to be deported, how can you not see the slippery slope to come when there's a Democrat administration in the future who's now using it against gun owners or using it against political opponents?
Yeah,
I mean, it's just a terrible idea. The Constitution, our Fourth Amendment rights, and our home is the most protected place. We have the highest protection in our home under our Bill of Rights. It's not it's non-negotiable. It's not a suggestion. It's not dependent upon political party or whether or not you think the political cause is important. It's completely non-negotiable. It's a red line, and we cannot allow it to be crossed. So it's very troubling that they're claiming the ability to write their own administrative warrants to get around the Fourth Amendment. So all of this has to be fought in the courts. It's not going to do any good to go out and try to fight federal officers on the street. In fact, that's probably exactly what they want. This sort of event, I believe, is exactly what they want, because now then they get to go create new laws that further restrict our freedoms. They get more funding, they get more power because that happened.
Bingo.
And so where that needs to be fought is in court with these law firms such as the Institute for Justice. If people want to help, they can donate to them. And these are lawyers that are fighting and suing the federal government and other governments, state and local as well, like 24/7. So if you care about these issues, you can donate to these law firms. And again, I recommend the Institute for Justice, and you can help keep them busy suing the government, because that's where you can help. Okay.
It works.
That or politics.
Right. It works. You have to. We saw the Biden administration back down on censorship because of litigation. We have seen the Trump administration back down on certain things because you're right. This is an effective way. We do have an effective system. We litigate our values.
Thank you so much for joining us. I think you just hit the nail on the head there at the end. I mean, they absolutely want. This is why I think Marjorie Taylor Greene was talking about they want us to be in a civil war. By creating this chaos, you get more control. You put more laws on the books. You take away our guns. You take away our freedoms.
Absolutely.
It takes a smart person like yourself to see that at a much higher level. And then, then you're going to have the Dan Bongino types who are down here telling no, they should be knocking down every door and grabbing every illegal.
Right.
And
It's
kicking.
their fault.
Yeah, it's their fault.
Don't get in. Don't get it. Don't F around and find out.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. Yeah.
All right.
Our Constitution allows us to F around. We're allowed to have a gun.
Yeah.
We can F around that way.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Thank you so much. It was great to hear your perspective. Absolutely fantastic.
Sure. You're
Really
welcome.
appreciate it.